Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. This month we are entering to a new theme. It's finding our why. Just when I was thinking about this theme, I thought about a car ride. You're with a younger, let's say a 7-year-old boy in the back seat. He's asking how long it'll take, and he asks you why all the time. We kind of wonder. It gets irritating and exhausting, but it makes, at least for me, it's a curiosity and excitement to go somewhere. It's still awake. There's something that is, I don't know, for me it feels encouraging and even hopeful. This month we're going to dive a little deeper on the idea of what discovering and understanding what that why may be and the importance of it. I remember when I was in school, Mark Twain is someone I read a bit, and he said this quote: "The two important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you discover the reason why." So to help me with this, we have a new guest. Her name is Sharon Rolph. Thank you so much for coming on and just sharing your insight with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I used to live down in your area, and now I'm up near Seattle, so we'll have a good time here.
Yeah, other side, was it? I forgot. I know I've been in that area, but not that close to Seattle. But yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to come on and share your insight with us. A little disclaimer for those that are in the States: 8988 is a crisis lifeline. But wherever you are around the world, I do encourage you to find that community, those people that you trust. Just ask them. And it's hard for us as adults, but I need help. Just to ask that question for those people, whether it's a church setting, whether it's a setting, a group setting that you have each week, or a colleague, I encourage you to ask that question. I always say people say that better than me, Sharon, so I'm going to just go with Picasso. He says it this way: the meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away. What comes to mind, or what do you think about what Picasso said?
Well, that says it pretty well. I've been actually quoting Aristotle quite a bit lately about know thyself, and that's kind of part of what purpose is. And it gets you out of bed in the morning. It gives you, well, like you say, your why. Life needs to be meaningful, and after I retired, I was bouncing off the wall for a while because I thought, how do I know if I'm productive? That's usually one of the ways that we feel our why is to pay for the roof over our head and our car and our education. But purpose has more to do with your values. It's something that touches your heart and say, I feel like I'm doing my job when I'm living my purpose. So let's take it from there.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's something intangible about the idea of purpose that we can't put, like, for me, it gets me out of bed, like you said. It gets me doing what I'm doing, gets me excited. It's not that work is still work, but it could be something that you're passionate about. It can kind of be the direction where you go. And I feel I think when I brought up that story of that car ride is because I feel that our curiosity kind of diminishes as we grow older. I try to I try to restore that. I just remember when I was, it's something that you actively have to do, I feel. Your thoughts?
Well, I recently posted, I think just last week, curiosity is a lifeline. Or another way I say it is be as curious as a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
When your 3-year-old wants to get into your pots and pans and rattle everything around, and they have to reach for that knob on the cabinet door, and they have to maybe climb up on something to get their height and whatever. 3-year-olds persist until they get what they want.
Yeah.
Your dog might do that too, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I feel. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
well, curiosity keeps us young, and that's why curiosity is a lifeline. It keeps looking outside of ourselves for what's possible.
Yeah, and for me, the curiosity is I totally agree. It is a lifeline. If we stop being curious, we start putting things in a box. We Everything has to fit in this nice box, and I don't know if you've been, and I've been a church leader before, and in churches, it's hard when that happens. When everyone's not curious anymore, it becomes everything has to fit in the box, and the young people who scream. I remember the cries in church, the babies, the ones who are curious, making all the noise. They're having a great time, and a lot of times we miss out what we're really missing out. At the end of the day, are we going to be the people who are fearful, or are we going to be people who are hopeful? There's a difference there.
Yeah, I have something to say about fearful. When I was living in Tampa, I had a rough. I kind of hit the wall a little bit.
Mm.
I didn't know very many people there. My friends up here said, one of them said, well, before you turn around and come home because you're homesick, she said, first give yourself 6 months to get adjusted. Well, 3 months I was doing okay. This is going along pretty good. But by the 4th month, I was getting shook up and hitting the wall. And for some reason, I reached for my concordance to see what I could find in the Bible.
Mm.
And what jumped out at me was several verses in Joshua chapter 1 and 2.
Mm.
Do not be afraid, be of good courage, be of great courage. Do not be afraid. And then recently I looked up and say, how many times does it say do not be afraid in the Bible? A lot.
Yeah.
Like 337 times.
Yeah. And it's there's no shortcuts. It's a process that a lot of times we forget is part of what life includes. If I want to be someone who's good at something, it's gonna be hard work. If I wanted to be something, it's gonna be hard work. There's no skipping that. And honestly, the life is that whole process. If you're not embracing the process, whatever you want to be, whatever you're going towards, whether you quote unquote make it or make those milestones, it matters not. It's if you enjoyed the ride along the way, and staying accountable to it. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, what I was thinking while you were talking was, if we lose our curiosity, or expanding, growing, learning, moving forward, then we're probably giving life a lot of excuses. We're not being curious because we're scared. People get my age. I'm 77 and I brag about it. You think there's all kinds of limitations. The limitations are only in your mind. How many ways could you be curious today? And it kind of can excite you. I've come across several words like curiosity and courage and hope and peace and possibilities is such a big one. It invites something outside of yourself to help you. Well, help is a good word. And the inviting, actually, I think in your preliminaries, asking for help, 988 is asking for help. We all need to be able to ask for help because we do need help. In fact, I had a pad of paper, skinny little piece of paper, but it said on it kind of had an angel kind of figure on it. It said, at times we all need help. Yeah. So even taking a ride into town might need help.
Yeah.
or getting an extra couple dollars for, I remember just needing a dime to take a ride. No, that was in Texas. That wasn't in Tampa. But we need to humble ourselves and ask for help at times because the possibilities then
Mm.
open way up.
Yes. It just reminds me. There's an entrepreneur, and I remember he spoke once, and I liked what he said. And this is unrelated, but it is kind of related how we view things. So if there's a house that me and my wife wanted to buy, and I said immediately, we can't afford it. There's nothing beyond that. You know, the question we should ask is how can we afford it, and then we stay with it, and we maybe take steps and later on down the road, and I tell people this, you may find something better than that home. You don't, because you're staying curious about it. You may be okay at first, and then you're like, oh, I don't know about this neighborhood. I don't know about this. But staying curious opens up that door. When we make a statement like, I can't afford it, it just fits in the box and becomes kind of what it is, and that's it. And I feel that, and I think Carl Jung says it this way: I'm not what happened to me, I'm what I choose to become. So it's kind of this constant. A lot of times I work in the mental health field, and a lot of times understanding we kind of, when I'm working with my clients, is we establish understanding, and I guess we of what reality is at this moment. But it doesn't mean we have to agree with it. It's like we have to accept it, not have to agree with it. But now the question is what's next. And if you're curious, if you have, it can be an exciting time because everything continues to change. So even if if you feel like everything's not working out, but you're here today, what can we do today forward? If that makes sense. So.
Yeah, I heard a speaker this morning. I remember hearing him 4 or 5 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and he had I guess he had cut out a picture of a house that he wanted to live in someday.
Mm.
And I'll never forget hearing him say he had moved and he didn't realize he was moving into the same house that picture was. And his son had actually asked them, was sitting on the box and while they're moving into the new home, and he kind of asked his dad, well, what is this? And like, what's it important? He had to do a double take to realize he had just moved into that house. And that has so encouraged me that what's possible, we can surprise ourselves. But I've also started kind of chewing on this curious thought of, in quantum field, our problem is already solved.
Mm-hmm.
Because in there's a place in the world, our makeup of the world, there's no sense of time. Like I love to read or hear people's stories on near-death experiences, and in heaven there's no sense of time there. So it's probably already solved, and you don't need to worry about it here. It's going to be taken care of. Do not fear.
Yes, and in understanding and going through the process, of course, I think about how we look at courage and how we look at our lives. I think sometimes we get them mixed up of environments. I was in the military. Some people who are combat vets come back and they're, unfortunately, not all of them make it. And the ones that we could easily say, oh, they were courageous in battle. They helped someone survive, live another day. But when we're home, when I'm working with communities who are struggling, with people who maybe have substance use or have issues of a little bit more serious nature, maybe the most courageous thing for them to do is to live well. And that's sometimes hard to swallow because that means you have to kind of look at yourself and, little by little, take those steps. Fearful, like understanding that something's discomforting, something's fearful. It's not bad. It's when you stay there. Understanding we are afraid. Bravery is not the absence of fear. Is having fear and still moving forward. I like what Yasmin Mogahed says, as resilience is very different from being numb. Resilience means you experience, you feel, you fail, you hurt, you fail, but you keep going. So it's like I want to feel everything as much as it's hurtful, because it gives things meaning. Like you mentioned, I read this study. If A lot of times, if we know someone's story, it's harder for us to do bad things to them. It's like if we understand, if we're, and I think this goes coincide of um, how we see ourselves and how we see others in the world. But what do you think about this quote, or anything I said, or anything you want to mention?
Not at the moment. When I talk about knowing yourself,
Mm-hmm.
when I talk a lot, my examples are for retirees often, but when we don't have our business cards anymore,
Yeah.
this tells us who we work for. They have our title on there, so that's kind of like what we're responsible for or why we're there. It tells us a place, kind of a structure to our day, why we get out of bed and why we do what we do, and people are relying on us. But all that goes away when you retire, and people get stuck because without their business card, like, who am I?
Yeah.
Well, I make these little art blocks, and one of them that I think is really pertinent is when you don't have a job. Excuse me, have you forgotten who you are?
Yeah.
You're still that accountant. You're still that colleague that is so good with people. You may have been a dynamite debater back in high school. You probably still are. So all the experiences that we've had, the people that we've met, the skills and talents that, maybe you're a great singer and people love to hear you sing. It's probably invisible. It's inside of you still. It's still there. And what I help people do is help them know themselves on the inside. It results in having more confidence, more boundaries about who you are and what you allow. But another huge thing about purpose is that it aligns with your values.
Yes.
Who teaches values? Actually, one of my college instructors, I wrote a paper on values just because I needed to practice my English, or what communication. And he said, in my 25, 30 years, I've never had anybody write a paper on values. Well, I think values are huge because that's where the meaning to life happens. Is your values might show up in the articles or news stories on the TV that get you all riled up and somebody needs to do something about that. Or it might be, oh, look at what somebody accomplished. I can't believe they did such a marvelous job. And it gets them some emotions going, and it's tugging at your heart. And it is something that matters to you. Love and integrity and being responsible are important to me. What's important to you, Robert?
For me, it's accountability. It sounds weird. Accountability. I value connections. I value not just communicating what my order is, but connecting with others. And also, I value community, which kind of disappears. Like I like the fact if I don't have to agree with you to respect you. I could still have a conversation with you whether I agree with you, because I know in my mind that our context will be different. I come from different experiences, but at the same time, I could still respect you and understand a bit of part of you that you share. So.
Yeah, I know something changed for me a lot, because we often have critical voices in our head. And in fact, I remember when I was probably about 23 or 24, and I had this critical voice come. I was Friday night, and I was crocheting an Afghan. I have it on my bed now, in fact. And this voice said, "You should be out there socializing and meeting people. It's a Friday night after all."
Yeah.
That's what you're supposed to do on Friday night. Okay. Well, excuse me. I chose to be here. I'm doing what I wanted to do. And by the way, I like my own company.
Yeah.
I'm an introvert, in case you don't know.
Mm.
And so I said, shoo, go away. And it did. And see, what was my point about critical voice? Oh, I started, and this wasn't that long ago. It was only about 5 or 6 years ago. I was over here with some friends. They had some people in the house, and we were sharing with each other. And somehow I stumbled on this thought of, I'm doing the best I know how.
Mm-hmm.
And I had kind of judged myself all through my life. I'd always been bigger. In first grade, I was bigger than anybody else, just because I was taller. And but how many ways we compare ourselves to each other?
Mm-hmm.
That is just a disaster waiting to happen, because we can always find somebody prettier and taller and skinnier and and all that. But I stopped judging myself. I'm doing the best I know how. Then I stood back a little bit and I thought, even though I went through trauma, my parents were doing the best they knew how. And to cut off that voice of criticism and keeping us, maybe we're not wearing the right haircut or the right T-shirt or the Nikes, in high school, or, you're always getting compared to others, the Levi's or the whatever. But such a relief has come since I stopped judging myself.
Yeah.
And after all, when you know who you are in the inside, that I think I must have gotten lectures during my life of being different. I know as a teenager did, because we weren't allowed to dance, in when I was a teenager in our church. And so that made us different, and then we might not be able to go to all the football games, and that made us different. And yeah, we're different because we're the Rolphs, So, but to later in life, they said, oh, here's a line I liked. Yeah, you're outstanding. Standing in a field. I grew up on a farm, and I thought that fit perfectly. and so I started embracing, I'm different because I'm unique. I have a unique fingerprint that nobody compares to me in all reality. And to be confident and feel good about, I'm one of a kind. I'm custom made after all. So take it away.
Yeah. Well, I just, a lot of times I encourage, is what I hear is internal validation versus external validation. That is something that it could be, comparing leads you to only discouragement. It gets worse now, because even though I think people forget, only 15, 20 years ago, there was no social media. You go now, you go on social media, everyone's on vacation all the time, which is impossible for me to, and it's really hard to compare. If you're really struggling with comparing, and then you're on social media distracting yourself from anxiety that maybe you just need to take a step. I feel that's what's also contributing to a lot of the increased stress that we're experiencing, the increased loneliness. There's a difference between being lonely and being alone. I'm fine alone at times. I actually took the test. I'm like half and half. It's funny. I'm leaning towards introvert slightly, but I'm still can have extroverted qualities, at least what they say. But I feel I'm more introverted because I gain more energy by being by myself. That kind of stuff. So I can go through the process. I enjoy. I am encouraged, but I do like what you're saying is a lot of times a big part of what may be a barrier is ourselves. There's a sociology His name is Coolidge. It's the Looking Glass Self Theory, and it says, "I am not who I think I am. I am not who you think I am. I am who I think you think I am." So it's kind of convoluted. It's that I don't even have evidence that you're thinking this way of me, but I'm saying that you are, and I'm feeling that you are. I'm responding because you are in my perception. So that's it's convoluted, but I think we're going to shift gears and I want to. A lot of times when I have new guests and even returning guests, I want to give them a moment to share a little about their stories, what brought them here, and why you do what you do. The floor is yours. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start by just saying right off top, my why seems to have come up during my teenage years. I was probably 14, 15 years old, and I did kind of like, what's my potential? I wonder what I've got inside of me, and by the same token, to some degree, wondering what's in other people out there, my classmates and so forth. But my story is, well, and so I am still impressed with how each other has potential, and I want to help bring out the best in people. So since I know that most of our talent is inside, and I can't tell what Robert's good at, I can't look at him and say, well, he's got a smile, so he might be fairly good with people, but but anyway, I want to impact the untapped potential in retirees.
Yeah.
There's something like 3 trillion hours still left in our life collectively that we could be doing some good with our untapped potential. And I want to encourage, inspire, and get that curiosity lit back up to what could you possibly do. But my story seems to have started in my crib. I vaguely have a couple flashbacks of being in my crib and being scared stiff as a board. And I didn't know for sure that happened, but when I was on my way to transfer to Tampa, I had just a day or two before, I was in a meeting in a house where this lady was giving people some words of wisdom or knowledge, and when she asked me some kind of question, I think I brought up this flashback, and she confirmed for me it really did happen. Well, when I was 3-4 years old, no, probably more like 4 or 5 years old, I was asked by my dad to help him in the bathroom, and then we had to keep a secret, and then don't tell mom. And yet in that flashback, it included my dad standing by my crib and leaning around the door and calling for mom that I needed help. Well, over the couple decades, my sister wound up having a baby by my dad. And I said hundreds of times, thank heavens he keeps his hands off me. I wanted to be invisible. I wanted to be, well, I figured, our mind tries to make sense of stuff. So I said, well, maybe if I keep my head down, if I don't rock the boat, if I'm be obedient and get good grades, maybe I'll be safe. And it wasn't until I was into my retirement 2-3 years when I realized I was still kind of invisible. I was trying to find clients, and clients weren't finding me, so I must be invisible. But and I'm still considering that I'm still might be a little numb in some of my emotions. I'm starting to ask what else is there that might be locked up still. And that's a good thing to ask, because if we're stuck or something about us is holding us back, I'm reading a book called Powered by Me, and she keeps referring to energy as being, are you gaining energy or draining of energy?
Mm.
And so I'm chewing on that about my relationships and my work and what's out there in the future. So feeling invisible often is tied to loneliness. It's often tied to people retiring and feeling unseen, unheard, and undervalued. And that's why not judging others is so critical, because they've been holding themselves back because they have been traumatized and have not healed from that yet. But that made me such a difference for me. I know I gave myself my 70th birthday party, and I was going through, my photo albums, and I was kind of shocked at I didn't look that much overweight, but because we're comparing ourselves to each other and the media tells us what we're supposed to look like, and we get that brainwashing going. And I remember being kind of shocked about that. I wasn't that much overweight. I was more weight proportionate. I know my dad kind of described me that way, and I was fortunate in that way. But since I've retired, I have taken off 50 pounds, so we're looking better. So my why is how valuable your free time is, and how valuable what it could mean to you by becoming curious and think of possibilities. One of my favorite books is The Art of Possibility. And let's see, to find meaning is volunteering is a great way to do that, because you're usually working with other people, you're meeting new people, you're helping somebody else's life. I delivered a food bank to four families every single week, and have been doing it for over 2 years, I think. And in fact, I wrote a book last year called Make a Marvelous Transition into Volunteering. And I told a story in that book right at the beginning about how my mom said, oh, Sharon, you blessing somebody else will bless not only them, but it will bless you too. Oh, volunteering is rewarded on both ends of the scale here. And I don't even remember what the deal was. Something came up and she was suggesting I help out, I guess. So there's a law of reciprocity that comes into play with volunteering. And so I preach a little bit in my book about some lessons that come with doing good for others. So volunteering makes you feel good. And you might learn something. And let me tell you a story about a guy that came on one of my podcasts, and he said he was 6 times the president of AARP here in Washington, and he had like 9 things that happen when you volunteer. And one of the stories he ended with was there was a lady in this senior living place that never came down to eat in the dinner hall. And he was kind of there to be an advocate for some of the residents. And come to find out, she didn't come to the dining hall because she didn't have any teeth. Well, that's fixed with dentures, after all. That's not all that it's not all that impossible.
Yeah.
So he helped that lady get dentures so she could then socialize and be amongst the other residents in the dining hall. And he had such an amazing feeling from having changed significantly that lady's life. So that's an example of marvelous can happen. But for me, I was commenting to Jackie by her front door was a lavender bush, and I like to run my hand over the lavender to get on my hands. And so she's, when I commented to her about that, she said, wait, I thought she was going to show me some more flowers. No, she had 2 fruit trees overloaded with fresh fruit, plums or prunes, or maybe one of each. And she insisted, she went to the garage and got me a box to go home with her fresh fruit that was overloaded. Reciprocity, there it was in motion. And so I got to be blessed along with blessing her.
Volunteers, I just can't say, there's so much I could say about volunteerism. I remember coming out of the military, having experiencing some onset of mental health issues, but didn't really understand it, obviously. And for me, I was bitter because I was in the military, and I didn't want to go to support groups because I felt disproportional that my story, I felt that I couldn't connect. It's just, it's the negative thought process. But funny enough, speed up to make the story shorter, is that when I started helping out, I started doing facilitating groups. It was the best thing. Why did I skip this? I don't want to do anything else. I'm like I said to Sharon earlier, I'm been in the mental health field for about 4 years. I love everything I do. I love working with the community of people I do. I wouldn't be doing anything else, and I wouldn't get there if I didn't relinquish some of the bitterness or negative thoughts that can be seated inside of you. You'll be surprised how that kind of sits there. You don't know why you don't do things. You have this kind of stoicness, but you try to numb it, think you're going to be more stronger or protected, but you just avoiding. And I feel like I avoided the opportunity, but I haven't anymore. So I really appreciate starting off volunteering and facilitating groups, and then doing actually groups in the drop-in center and just loving it, and then being hired soon after because I just was really much involved in that area. So it's just been a wonderful experience. But can you tell me what the name of your book is before we move on?
Oh, yeah. My book is kind of a do-it-yourself. I asked lots of questions in it. Fresh Courage in Retirement. And the subtitle is Finding Purpose, Essence, and Fulfillment. And I tell a story. In fact, the story about the AARP guy is in here because he gives 9 things that I could use as passing on to you, sharing with you what he shared with me. The first story is about Joyce, who did community service projects around the world and wound up feeding baby lions, helping out at a baboon sanctuary, and singing English to Chinese students. And they liked hearing the English in music. So she sang for them a Beatles song, Can You Imagine?
Oh, yeah.
And had practically everybody crying, and even her, But so this is do it yourself, finding purpose. And I have, I like to help people think. So that's why I ask questions. And then the answers kind of build, from one chapter to another. And by the time you get to the last chapter, I kind of inspire you to consider working with me about finding your essence, because your essence really isn't involved in the action items here. This just gets you started on purpose. But some people, they can't quite grasp it in it, doing it all by themselves. So they want to do it with someone. Well, get your brother or sister or your neighbor or your best friend to do it with you. So you're sharing thoughts and, oh yeah, that reminds me, Robert, here's a story that connects with the question. So Fresh Courage in Retirement is inviting you to be courageous and curious, exploring the possibilities. So when you stop thinking that you don't know any way else to solve a problem, hey, praying often gets you some answers. Listening while you're watching a campfire or watching the ocean roll in and out, and this quiet little voice starts talking to you maybe, and it could scare you because it's such a great idea and it scares you to your bottom of your stomach. Well, one of my art blocks that goes along with that is you don't have to know the next you'll know the next step once you take the first step.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes we think we have to know the whole picture how to do something. And I think spiritually, it's just calling on you to take the first step. And then the next one will open up.
Yeah, and just to those who are listening, watching, that the links to find out where to find all the information, the Sharon's book and everything else will be in the notes. So please, I encourage you to check it out. I just want to say thank you for sharing what you shared. It's it's inspiring, especially when everyone would say, "Oh, I think that rest can come in different ways. It doesn't mean you have to sleep all the time. Rest can come in being creative. Rest can come in expressing yourself in different ways." So I love that, when it comes to retirement, why all this time when you're working and now you've ended and you retired from working, that you decide that you're going to follow what everyone else tells you what retirement is. Why don't you do something that you want to do yourself? Why don't you? And it's just taking ownership. And at the same time, I do really, I want to say, I want to give you a thumbs up. You did a great job. A lot of times this gets overlooked, especially communities are like, oh, they're older, but there's so much more. There's so much more that can happen, so much more that can do. And I really appreciate you sharing that. I honestly don't think there's anyone really truly lazy. I think that word is kind of there is lazy habits, but if you have purpose or you something that you're driven to do, you'll see the person that we would call lazy doing a lot of things if they know what their purpose and drive is. It's just finding where that is, allowing yourself to get there. So
Okay, well, I have an assignment for you.
okay.
Get out a piece of paper. And you could probably do it on your phone, but I'm still attached to paper. Is make a list of 20 things you love to do.
Mm-hmm.
20 things you love to do. While you're doing that, you might pay attention to how it makes you feel. I started out in my teenage years. My dad always liked cookies and pies and cake.
Mm-hmm.
So I got pretty good at making cookies. So I like to bake. And let's see, I used to like to sing. I don't sing so much, but as you're making your list of 20 things, just kind of be aware that does it give you energy or does it drain your energy? If you like to do it, it's probably a pretty good chance it gives you a little bit of energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then after you get your list made, you can reflect a different way, and in that is the thing giving you mental energy, the idea, or giving you physical energy. Well, baking cookies, it takes energy, but then, well, physically, but it also feeds us a little bit, our favorite snacks. Is it giving you emotional energy? Well, if you're taking it to somebody's birthday party, yeah, it might give you emotional energy because then you'll be with your friends and they'll like what you brought.
Mm-hmm.
And is it giving you spiritual energy and social energy? Yeah. So and notice how much better you feel when you think about what you enjoy doing. That's one of the keys to discovering your inner spark. Let's see if I can hold this up straight. Is the first thing, love to do. What do you love to do? Mm-hmm. And that might help open you up to doing more of this. Who am I? Who am I? Well, there's some great things I enjoy doing. I just find a place where you can do more of that. That would be a good reason to volunteer, because maybe, oh, I know. I dreamt up a project, probably about 40 years old, when I had a job that was working 3 12-hour days.
Mm-hmm.
And then that means I had 4 days off. What do you do with 4 days when you don't have time and money to go out of town all the time? Well,
Yeah.
I dreamt up a project to take cookies to my church. And they would go, when they were calling on people in their homes, they would take a plate of cookies to these people. And what I loved about it is that when they left, there was evidence that somebody's been here. Somebody left something here. But sometimes they took it to the fire department or the police department, or I imagine maybe they even took them to some hospitals. I don't know. But I did get a couple notes, thank you notes from people who sounded like they had been struggling, that they had been lonely or depressed. And my cookies was a way of bringing a little sunshine to their day. And how cool is that? Can you add sunshine to somebody's day?
Yes. I got 18 right now. That's why I got so far. So,
wow, I'm impressed. Oh,
it's hard. I'm getting like, I don't want to. So I'll just name some. So you'll kind of I like singing. I like gaming. I like writing. I like going to concerts. I like cooking. I like sharing time with smaller groups of friends. I like helping others. I like video editing. I love that whole, like, I used to do the whole sound thing. I like doing that. I like, what is it? What did I put here? Hiking. Yeah, I like hiking. I like going out, going to trails. I like being with my family. My mom, my brother. I'm half South Korean, so I like karaoke or noraebang. I like karaokeing, so that's how I was brought up to it. Traveling. I used to like traveling. One of the most majestic places I've been was Scotland. I like when I drove through Scotland. That was nice. Church. I do like church. I like being in church. I like singing in church. There's some community. Obviously, I don't certain parts of it, and I'll just say this not to distract. I don't like as much, but I do like the community aspect, and sometimes they can be a very positive community, especially if they're not, let's just say, fearful. Let's just say that. Okay. And then I don't know. I'm pretty comfortable behind the mic, so like I used to do speaking things, so I don't mind that. I do actually like doing that. Not all the time, but like I like to do it at time to time. Teaching depends. Like I like to do teaching certain aspects. I feel that gives me enjoyment. I used to like participating in sports. Some of the sports with like jiu-jitsu. I used to Brazilian jiu-jitsu, so that was something I liked. Brazilian jiu-jitsu was a thing that I did. But it doesn't give me take energy away. It's just for me, jiu-jitsu when I was in Oklahoma, where I was stationed, was one of the things that got me out of a lot of trouble. But that got me out. So I always have a soft spot for Brazilian jiu-jitsu because of that. And then I like watching sports. I remember I was in New Jersey, normally raised in, so I like going to see the failing Mets play. So that's what ice hockey. I like ice hockey, so I like sports. So that's 18 right there, I think. Yes.
So another way to look at your list too, Robert, is about what's being and doing.
Okay.
Because in retirement, maybe we can't do as much, but we still can be. I think of even people. I've often looked at a chair and said, if the best I could do is just sit in this chair all day, I would still be valuable. I would still be able to speak and write and listen. And so many people in life need somebody to listen to them, But it's another way of kind of like what's expressing Robert's heart and what's expressing Robert's being out there in the activity of life, I guess. But we do.
Yeah, and I feel like I ask the same question when I'm with the client is, especially when we're trying to build positive habits or positive things to build. How many steps does it take to get there? Like if you say you like mountain biking and you don't have a bike, let's go to something you have, or let's build to get you a bike, that kind of thing. So for me, writing is something that I'm slow to. I'm writing something right now, but I haven't finished it. Just kind of working through it. But I get that. Singing, I always love expressing. There's a million good singers out there. I can throw. It's just for me a way to express. I think song does something that words cannot do. So that's what I would say there. But yeah, it was a fun exercise. I really appreciated going through. I was trying to think. I'm like, I don't want things to kind of overlap too much, but a lot of times it's creative wise. Me and my brother are very musical, sound wise, and I think it's just a nice way to express. I have a long day at work. I'd like to kind of dabble in this, so it's just knowing what helps for me at least.
So why don't we close with the last thing that's so powerful to me is when I learned what my essence was, or what I'm now calling my spark.
Okay, we'll say our final thoughts. So go ahead.
Final thoughts. The way I described myself after looking at what do I love to do and my values and my hot buttons and what my dreams are, it turned out like this. It's a metaphor. Could also be considered a parable, I think. I am precious jewel of wisdom. I am colorful collaborator, motivator, and learner. I am tranquil, authentic, and pure inspirer. I light fires. I'd like to light your fire.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for coming on, sharing your insight. It was so fun. A lot of times, I just love these exercises. They're so simple. I felt good doing it. To tell the truth, just thinking about what things I do like. I just want to tell those who are listening, that to keep updated with Revive Ministries, the various platforms. Like I said before, look at the notes and check out what Sharon, her book. Check out for me, I just encourage you at the very least, if you feel like everything is not working out, at the very least, can you invest in yourself? Can you take a little bit of time when we think about self respect? We always think about how people treat us, but how about let's focus on how we treat our time and what time we have left. Not just want to say thank you again, Sharon, for coming on. This is goodbye from Revive Ministries with last quote from Henry David Thoreau. He said, "When you get by achieving your goals, it's not as important as what you become by achieving your goals." Thank you so much.